Now, if you'd forgotten the German elections were even happening this weekend, you'll find yourself in pretty good company, possibly with a large number of Germans. Is Angela Merkel too boring for Germany? Screamed the New York Times op-ed. Others have made it less personal, calling it simply the dullest election for half a century. But there's a keen reason for this. One of the biggest challenges facing the country, the future of the euro and the EU, has simply been ironed out of the campaign. Germany is reluctant to lead Europe, and it doesn't take a genius to work out why. Anna Little went to Berlin to examine the country's relationship with its past.
I'm proud to introduce our headliner for tonight. The professor of the English stand-up comedy scene in Berlin. Please give a huge round of applause for our headliner, Stefan Danziger!
Whoa, you good? Everything's fine? Yeah, I'm a German comedian. I work as a tour guide in Berlin. You know, even in Germany you can say tour guide or guide or Stadtführer, but please don't say just Führer.
In Berlin, there's a thriving English-language comedy scene. You can do the same gags in German, the comics here say, but the punchline falls flat in a language in which the verb comes at the end of a very long sentence. Even here, alongside the lightheartedness and the mirth, Germany's history muscles in.
There were two attempts to rule whole Europe, and now they go to Angela Merkel, like, please help us, rule us. And she's like, no. We tried twice and everybody became bitchy.
The problem is that because we are like in a leading role again, is that of course, you know, when Germany now says something, let's do it this way, or we should do it this way, of course there's again the connection like with, you know, the history. Like, you tell us what to do, but we say we don't want it.
But you do Hitler jokes.
Yeah, the Hitler jokes are fine. Hitler jokes, everybody can laugh about Hitler because he's like kind of like a comic character already. But like, to make like dark jokes about the Third Reich or like the Holocaust, that's a bit still.
It's still too soon.
It's no, I wouldn't say. I don't know. Maybe it's too soon. Yeah, still too soon.
History walks hand in hand with German chancellors. Last month, in the middle of the election campaign, Angela Merkel went to Dachau, Nazi Germany's first concentration camp, now a memorial site. It filled her, she said, with deep sadness and shame. When a German chancellor bows her head at Dachau, it's more than a gesture of contrition. It's also a warning. She's saying, don't forget. Don't forget where we came from. Don't take the miraculous transformation of Germany for granted. Remember that it was only made possible because in the decades after the war, Germany was drawn by its neighbours into the European mainstream. The process of European integration helped deliver Germany from the nightmare. It helped make Germany a normal European democracy. It Europeanized Germany. That was the whole point. It is striking that in this lackluster election campaign, the question of Germany's reluctant leadership in Europe has scarcely figured. It's partly because there's no disagreement between the parties. But it's also a measure of how uncomfortable Germans are with the very thought of it, that there is so little public discussion of it. For in Germany, the past still shapes the present. History is the unseen guest at every conference table. Germany's northern European neighbours want Germany to lead Europe out of its current crisis. But Germany, for reasons of history, is nervous about leading.
The Germans had always been told after World War II, please be reticent, be modest. This means the Germans did not learn to lead. And therefore you see these two extremes somewhere. On the one hand, the Germans show to the others what they can. They like this. And on the other hand, especially in foreign policy, in military, the Germans have this tendency to be totally reserved.
A thriving economy with industry at its heart is the source of the leadership role that has been thrust upon Germany unbidden. This is the Autostadt, car city, at the Volkswagen plant at Wolfsburg. It's a high-tech vending machine that spits out cars. Volkswagen make 4,000 cars a day here. "15 years ago, Germany was the sick man of Europe, but it implemented painful and unpopular labour market reforms. Now, Germany's unemployment is less than half the European average. Its books are balanced and its national debt is actually falling. And all this without quantitative easing, without printing money to meet the crisis. For Germans know that this great engine of wealth creation was constructed on the solid foundation of a strong and stable currency, the mighty Deutschmark. Currency stability is close to a religion here. The Deutschmark, more than anything, was Germany's redemption from the nightmare years. So for Germans, inflating your way out of a crisis is not an option. Why? History again.
Now we are talking about the history of hyperinflation in Germany in the early 1920s. That is still very much in the minds of Germans. And this is an angst which is particularly German. And it's quite amazing that almost after 100 years it still plays a big role. Not all Germans used to believe in God, but we all believe in the Bundesbank.
So Germany's wealth has put her reluctantly in the European driving seat. Volkswagen's all-terrain vehicle course is a bumpy, hazardous road.
That is very uncomfortable.
And an elegant metaphor for the path Germany must now steer to return the Eurozone to safety.
You don't learn this overnight. You look at Britain, how much time Britain has needed to learn this role, because it has lost, let's say totally, its past role. And therefore you see a certain crisis of legitimacy and of identity of Britain today. And the Germans and the French go through the same experience, and the Germans too. And this is one of our problems, is this sort of crisis of identity.
So these boulders on the left, we've got to try and avoid them.
Yes, and then we just aim for them.
As it negotiates each new emergency in the years ahead, it will demand from its neighbours that they come with Germany down the road that leads eventually to a political union to match the currency union.
Yo, down we go. Oh, that's steep.
We will pay if the rules are set and if there is some, also renouncements on sovereignty. Because if you want Germany at the end to pay, then Germany needs also to have decision power.
In return for opening its wallet, this new Germany wants something back from the rest of the Eurozone. It wants a set of enforceable rules, banking union, fiscal discipline, European oversight of national budgets. For Germany, the answer is always more Europe, not less. Deeper integration, less national sovereignty, so that no one nation can again endanger the shared currency. Germany doesn't seek this in a single Big Bang moment. Instead, as each new crisis emerges, it tries to walk Europe down that path by increments. So what began 50 years ago as an attempt to Europeanize post-war Germany looks more and more to many like an attempt to Germanize Europe, slowly, peacefully.
It's obvious that to some extent Europe will be more German. It is already more German. And the real thing is this so bad? Germany has a winning model, a very good socio-economic structure. If Germany is able to give ownership to that model for everybody, then Germany has soft power, and it should be German Europe for everybody, because German Europe is the only way to have a safe social Europe.
It is already happening. In Greece, austerity-driven public spending cuts. In Spain, labour market reform to improve productivity. Things get worse before they get better. Germany pays the bills and takes the blame. On the streets of Athens, Mrs. Merkel is depicted with a Hitler moustache. Germany's reticence, its impulse to caution, grows out of its history. Germans here at least can laugh at their own character traits, but there's an edge of nervousness, of self-consciousness to the laughter.
Remember that time at the Love Parade when I...
Drew Portnoy is an American financial journalist and part-time comedian who's been here so long he's practically German.
Now I do German things now, like seriously, like I don't even think about it. If I see somebody do something weird in front of me, I look right at them and I go... You don't do this.
Klaus, are you seeing this? This is not done. Or like on the bike path, you know that guy on the bike path who rings his bell at every moment, ding, 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 you know that guy? Yeah. That's me. So, Germans are not allowed to say, I am proud to be German, because that is tied to the Nazi history. So if you went into polite company with Germans and you said, aren't you guys proud of being Germans, the room would fall silent. They're glad to be German, I would say.
Is Germany really finally emerging from the shadow of the 1940s? Is it really finally ready to lead with the vigour that its northern European neighbours want? Ready to impose its will on Europe? For the very thought of it still wakes European ghosts.
Alan Little. Well, Michael Sturmer, a former speechwriter for Chancellor Kohl, joins me now. Michael Sturmer, do you think the Germans are scared to ever be leaders again?
No, not really. When it comes to foreign and security policy, the Germans are very reluctant for all kinds of reasons. First of all, there may be losses, there may be body bags. The political class in Berlin is not ready for a world view like in Paris or in London. But, and that's the other side, of course, when you have monetary union, you have a treaty-based agreement, a treaty-based legal system, and there the Germans are quite rigorous. They are ready to give credits, to give guarantees, but they want something for it, and that is that everybody who receives these benefits should behave like a good member of the club.
But you are the strongest.
There is a kind of leadership.
Yeah, but in terms of the economy now, you are the strongest financially. Don't you feel the urge to impose what you know and what you've learned on other European countries?
Why do you say impose? No, that was the deal done at Maastricht more than 20 years ago. And the idea is now that other countries, especially countries that are in great difficulties like Portugal or Greece or Cyprus, should stick to the rules, back to the legal provisions, back to the legal structures. I wouldn't call that leadership. I would call it a sort of correction of past sins, and that's in everybody's interest. Now, there is, of course, the problem of great hardship, and everybody who can tries to wriggle out of that discipline, but it's a rule-based system, and if it isn't a rule-based system, the Germans, on the whole, have so far accepted that other countries have enormous difficulties, but that will not go on forever. Yeah, Germans are very worried, not so much about inflation. Germans are very worried about the huge masses of credits that have been contracted or have been given in their name.
Michael Sturmer, thank you very much for joining us. Michael Sturmer, their former speechwriter for Chancellor Kohl. Just a very quick look at the papers tomorrow. That story that Zoe Conway brought us earlier, the bedroom tax. Now 50,000 people are facing eviction as the front of the Independent. One affected council, 10-3, has fallen into rent arrears. Tomorrow night, we will be introducing you to our latest member of the presenting team. We might even try and explain that a little further tomorrow. But that's all from us tonight. I'll be back tomorrow. Good night.